Hi, I'm John Fedko, and I'm currently the host of KDKA Radio's high school football coverage that begins on August 26th on KDKA Radio.
What's going on, chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is DingoTalk. My guest this week is, I'm going to run down a list of some things that he's done. Former president of Vincentian. You may recognize him from Friday nights, the Fedko zone, Skylights. Now recently coming out of retirement to do a pregame show with Mike White and a host of others for KDKA Radio, John Fedko. John, thank you for taking the time to sit with us.
Carlo, it's an honor to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's an honor to have you. I mean, I grew up watching you. There's 3 stations in Pittsburgh, and there's really one that if you're a high school athlete, you want to hear, you want to be on the Fedko zone. I mean, that was kind of the way it was.
Well, I mean, I'm an old man. I'm 62. I got to Pittsburgh when I was 27, so I started in 1987, and I retired from the full-time job in 2010. Stayed on to do Skylights for a few more years, just Friday nights. And God had me go run a Catholic high school for a few years. And he rewarded me with 2 state baseball titles there, which were absolute miracles. I'm writing a book about just miracles. Those were miracles. And my whole life's been a miracle. I don't have a lot of talent, Carlo, but God's been really good to me. I've been going to church every day since I was in high school. Trinity High School in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. That's where I went to high school. Mm-hmm. And just had a lot of prayers answered. Pray a lot. I pray a lot. I say 9 rosaries a day. I'm not kidding you. Not kidding you.
How do you get to Mechanicsburg? Because you're born in, we were talking before, you were born in Virginia.
My dad was in the military. Yeah, my dad was in the military. He was a lieutenant colonel. He fought in the Korean War. He was shot down in a chopper in the Korean War. Only guy who survived. The chopper crash, killed everybody but him. And then he fought in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. And he was a really smart guy. He was involved in Vietnam in trying to stop planes from being hit by what's called flak. And they actually sent him to USC to do some engineering on that. And because he went to USC on this military scholarship, and he was working at the Pentagon. So I was living in Fairfax, Virginia when he retired as a lieutenant colonel. Mm-hmm. He had to send me to USC, but he retired. He's buried in Arlington now. He's passed away. His grave overlooks the Washington monuments. It's really incredible to go to see his grave in Arlington. He was a really tough guy. Carlo. And I love my dad. Everybody's a product of their parents. My sons are a product of me. Good or bad. If your sons end up good or bad, it's a product of the father. My dad, I'm writing a book, and the biggest moment of my life, Carlo, happened when I was 12 years old. We moved to Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. I was going to East Pennsburg Junior High School, and it was the end of a school day, and 5 bullies came up to me, and I was just standing there waiting for my bus, and one guy just boom, hits me in the face. I got blood all over me. The next guy, boom, hits me in the stomach. I'm down on the ground. The next guy kicks me. And one of the kids says, Fedko, this is going to happen to you every single day at high school, and they walk away. Now, this was 1972. It was a different era, a way better era. It was a day when bullies beat you up and teachers didn't get involved. In fact, I remember a male teacher, he was looking at what was going on, and he was literally laughing. Mm-hmm. I had blood all over me. I got now I'm the 12-year-old kid. I got on the bus. The bus driver's laughing at me. I have blood all over my shirt. He goes, hey, kid, looks like you lost the fight. So I'm back in my seat. I'm 12 years old. I'm crying. I get home. My mom was a nurse. She came home. I was still all bloody. It's like, what happened to you? I said, I got beat up by 5 bullies. So I went to my room. I was kind of resting. And my dad comes home. The greatest moment of my life. He's a tough dude. Now, he was working for the government. He was working in environmental resources. He was a really smart guy. So he had retired from the military. And he opened the door and he looked at me and he said, what happened to you today? I said, I got beat up by 5 bullies. And he said, kid, you better learn to defend yourself or it's going to happen again. And he slammed the door. And that's the best thing a father could have done. The best. Nobody called any teachers. Nobody called any moms. Nobody called the school. Instead, my dad got me a weight set, and I trained, and I got bigger and stronger, and I never got beat up by a bully again. And that shaped my life. It shaped everything around me. I remember it like yesterday. And I believe how my dad handled it was how I was going to force me on how I was going to handle adversity the rest of my life. Because the rest of my life, I would find myself in situations where I was facing adversity. And I'd always go back to that moment. Another moment I talk about, I have a little TikTok thing called Walk On with John Fedko, because I'm not only writing a book, but I'm kind of going over some of the major points in my life. Again, we're going back to ninth grade. I'm playing freshman football at Trinity High School. And I'm on the kickoff coverage team. The game starts. We're actually playing East Pennsburg Junior High. The game starts. I go down, and a guy comes out of nowhere and boom, takes his elbow and punch right in my nose. My nose explodes. I got blood. I mean, all over. I have a broken nose. I still have it. There's blood all over me. Now, the 70s, you guys that are listening to this know it was the greatest time in the world to play football. I got blood all over me. I come off the field. The coach grabs me. He goes, Fedko, you okay? And I said, yeah. He said, okay. That's it. I stayed in the game. I played the whole game. The guys are playing with that blood all over me. And this nonsense about concussions. I played football. I had tons of concussions. I'm 62. I think I'm in pretty good shape mentally. I'm not a believer that concussions hurt you. That's just me, because I had concussions, including that day. It made me tougher. And I praise the Lord for that football coach. It did not pull me out. That happens today because the blood, the kid, they're going concussion protocol. The guy's probably sitting out for 5 games. It was a different era. That ninth grade football game, again, that coach kept me in the game. My nose is bleeding. I have a broken nose. I'm 14.
Rub dirt in and take a lap.
Carlo, it ended up, I'm 40 years old facing adversity. I go back in time to, just you play with it. You play with pain. You get yourself back up. No one's going to feel sorry for you. And in this business, especially when I was getting in, Carlo, you got to understand, when I was trying to become a sportscaster in the 70s, there's no cable. ESPN's just starting. This is 1978. There's no cable. There's 3 television stations in every market. There's about 225 TV markets, and they each have maybe 2, 3. Some have 4 sportscasters, and that's it. Yeah. That's it, man. It's like making the major leagues. It's impossible. Carlo, when I was going to college, I had thousands of people tell me, you have no shot. Do something realistic.
Well, how do you get yourself from Southern California to Midland, Odessa? Because this is listen, again, miracle story. So I'll go through that one.
So it was, I just did a TikTok video today on what I did at USC, because I went to USC only because my dad was going there. I was not your typical USC student. Now, in 1979, USC was different than it is today. I'm not a fan of USC. I didn't like it then. I don't like it now. It was full of rich kids, rich parents, a lot of movie stars kids sent there. I was an outcast there. My dad sent me there only because he wanted me to go to Xera. He went there. So, I was going to church every day at that point, really trying to be a saint. I graduated from USC a virgin at 22 for many reasons, because I tried, but also because there wasn't a girl at USC that would say hi to me. I had no money. I wasn't good looking. Drove a Buick. At that point, the kids that were going to USC drove Porsches, BMWs, Mercedes-Benz. They looked like models. I was completely an outcast there. But when I got to USC, I heard USC has a lot of connections because it's in LA. So I went to the internship department at USC. And of course, I didn't have any money. I was a nobody. Most of the kids that went to USC had their dads were like corporate guys. I'm some nobody. And they literally laughed at me. They said, who are you, punk? Get out of here. There's 1,000 people who want an internship at a TV station. You're not going to get one. Get in line. Maybe you'll get one as a senior. I doubt it. I walked out of there going, I don't need USC. Again, I've been punched in the face so many times. I called up KNXT. It's KCBS now. I called them up. I'm a sophomore because my freshman year I went to UCI because my dad probably couldn't afford to send me to USC, and he wanted me to work. Also, I worked maintenance at UCI when I went there my freshman year. Anyway, I go to USC as a sophomore. I called KNXT, and a producer answers, and I say real quick. I called the sports department. And the producer answered. This was back when they were answering because they were looking for scores. It was the fall, so he probably thought I was a high school guy. Called. And I said, hi, this is John Fedko. I'm a student at USC. I don't want any money. I don't want any credit. I don't want an internship. I will work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I will come in. I will clean your floors. I will get coffee. I will run errands for you. I'll wash your car. If you want me to come at 4 a.m. and clean up the sports department, I'll do anything you ask. I just want to come into the sports department and work for free. You don't have to give me any college credit. You don't have to give me any money. I don't want an internship. There was silence on the phone for about 30 seconds. And the guy said, come on in, let's talk. So I go to, next thing you know, next day I'm in KNXT. I mean, there's legends working there. Roy Firestone was the weekend guy. Jim Hill was there. He's still there. I go in, and this guy's like amazed at how much guts and faith I've got. And I said, and he said, kid, I mean, our internships have been filled for, you got to get them like 3 years in advance. I said, I don't want an internship. I don't want you to pay me anything. I don't want any credit. I just I'll do anything for you. He said, man, I've never seen anything like you, kid. Sure. Come on in, man. Come on in. Listen to what happens. I started in 79 at KNXT and it's now KCBS in LA. After I made that call, 2 days later, I called Channel 11 in LA. They were a Metro Media. They were independent. They had a legendary sportscaster named Gil Stratton. Producer got on the phone. Same thing. They called me in. They hired me. Now I'm working at 2 LA stations. All my prayers have been answered. What happens in the late 70s in LA? Here's what I get to cover. 1979, the Rams go to the Super Bowl. The Magic Johnsons drafted by the Lakers. They win the NBA championship. The Dodgers host an all-star game in 1980 where J.R. Richards, by the way, pitches. He ends up dying. 1981, the Dodgers go to the World Series. Wayne Gretzky's playing for the Edmonton Oilers. Guess who's in their division? The LA Kings. And these guys loved me so much at KNXT because I didn't care about school. USC was a joke. I was blowing off classes and going to KNXT. I was there every second of my life just sitting there. And what they do is they send a photographer out. There's only, there were 2 superstar sports guys. They weren't going. So they went to the big games. And I would go to the photographer and hold the mic. I'm in the locker room with the Lakers interviewing Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I'm in the Rams locker room interviewing Vince Ferragamo. I'm interviewing Fernando Valenzuela's interpreter. It's craziness. All these prayers that I prayed to God for were coming true, not because I had any faith, Carlo, because I had guts. I had guts to call the guy. And as I've always told my own kids, don't ever do anything for money. Don't ever do anything for money. Money and pride will destroy you. Be humble. I never asked how much you're going to pay me until I got to Pittsburgh in 1987. Ever. And even in Pittsburgh, I never negotiated a contract. I took what they paid me. I tried to live my life as a Christian, like my faith. God's taken care of me. He's been really good to me. I was able to retire at 50, but I never did anything for money. I did it because I didn't have any talent. So I got into the perfect world that you don't need any talent, the world of sports media. It was a perfect thing. It was a perfect thing for a guy like me. And so that's what happened at USC. Now you asked how I got to Texas. Well, I loved Roger Staubach. I loved him. I loved Roger Staubach. I was very religious, very close to Christ, trying to be a saint. Again, I graduated from college conversion at 22. I'd never even been on a date. And Roger Staubach was one of the only guys who talking about his faith. And I mean, I literally was on my knees in 1975 when he threw that pass to Drew Pearson in Minnesota. I was on my knees praying when he hit that Hail Mary pass. And an amazing story, Carlos. Years later, in like the late 90s, I got to go out to dinner with Roger Staubach. And I told him that story that I was praying for him when he made that pass to Drew Pearson. So anyway, I loved Roger Staubach. I love the Cowboys. I love Tom Landry because of their faith in God, and they openly talk about it. And so I wanted to do sports in Texas. So when I graduated from USC, of course, USC said, you got no chance to be a sportscaster. Everybody wants to be a sportscaster. So I sent some tapes out and got the rejection letter that everybody gets. And my dad was, again, just a great guy. So I told my dad, it's a true story, Carlo. I told God, first of all, okay, God, I've asked you I need a miracle. If you want a miracle, you got to act like it's going to happen. Okay. You got to act like it's going to happen. You can't just sit back and go, hey, God, give me that miracle I'm asking. So I had a good resume tape because I'd been working at these 2 TV stations, and how they pay me back was they let me make tapes. So I got these tapes around like interviewing Magic Johnson, and the Dodgers are winning the World Series. I'm there. It's craziness, the tape I've got. So I take this tape and I tell my parents, I'm going to Texas. I'm buying a one-way plane ticket. I'm going to rent a car, and I will not come back. I will not come home. I'll either become a sportscaster in Texas and I'll cover the Dallas Cowboys, or I'll be a janitor, or I'll live on the street, but I ain't coming home. And God knew in my heart if I was really being truthful, but my dad knew it. My mom went nuts. She said, no, you can't. My dad said, let him go. Let him go. So I bought this one-way plane ticket, and I looked, okay, where am I going to start with these job interviews? Because the great thing about Texas, especially back in 1982, which when I did this, was there like 20 little TV stations, 20 little markets.
Yeah.
So I was going to start at Odessa, Midland. I flew into Odessa, Midland, and I was going to go down to San Angelo, go down to Brownsville, then head over Waco, go all the way up until I got to Amarillo and Lubbock, and drop back I was going to go to every single market in Texas. I fly into Texas, Carlo. First place I fly into. So I remember the night I fly in, and I get this Motel 6 for like $30 back then. And I'm on my knees praying to God, saying, God, I need a miracle. I need a miracle. And all I kept God saying is, as long as you don't do everything for money, always give me the credit, you'll get your miracle. So my first interview is at KOSA TV. It's at 9 a.m. I go into the news director's name is John McCall. And I give him my tape, and I said, thanks for letting me talk to you. I said, I want to be a sportscaster. And he said, yeah, you and 8,000 other kids. And he pointed over to a pile. I said, let's see that pile over there. That's 1,000 tapes of guys who want to be sportscasters. You have no shot of being a sportscaster here because everybody wants to be a sportscaster. So the only thing we got right now is a weekend weather guy, or weekend weather guy's leaving. He said, can you do weather? And I said, yeah.
There's your foot in.
Carlo, I've never done weather before. Carlo, you got to listen to me. I'd never done weather before. Then he said, oh, you do weather? Okay, you'll be on an audition tonight at 6:30. Right after the 6 p.m. news, you're going to do our weathercast. See you back here. So I walk out, go right to the church that's down the road, pray. And I come back to the station. I found out they have a superstar weather guy. His name's Jay Gordon Lund. So he comes in at 3, and I go up to him. I said, Jay Gordon, I'm gonna audition for the weather team. Can you show me how to do this? Guy's the greatest guy in the world, just the nicest guy in the world. So I watch him put his weathercast together. This is back with the boards. They had the plastic magnets and stuff. So he puts it together, and I watch him do the weathercast live at 6:20, and then at 6:30, I've got my suit and everything. And they said, okay, we're going to go over here, and we're going to put you on the weathercast. And, the news director's sitting back in the control room. Light goes on, Carlo. I'd never done a weathercast in my life. I did a 3-minute weathercast. The red light goes off, and the guy comes out of the control room and goes, you're really good. You got the job. You start in 2 weeks. Wow. Carlo, I'd never done a weathercast in my life. It was a flat-out miracle. I was a weekend weather guy at KOSA TV in 1982 because it was a miracle. It was a flat-out miracle. And so I was a weekend weather guy, and I never asked how much I was going to make. He ended up paying me $10,000 a year. And he said, you're going to be the weekend weather guy, and you're going to be a photographer for the female reporters during the week, because these had these huge cameras. They were called Ikegamis. They were gigantic, really heavy, and the female photographers couldn't handle them. So I was a photographer during the week, and I told the news director, I said, okay, can I do sports on my 2 off days for free? And he said, yeah, we're not going to pay you. I said, well, I'll do it for free. So on my 2 off days, Carlo, I did sports reporting because there were 2 guys there, John Hambrecht and Jeff Scholl with the sports guys. And I was a sports reporter who'd go out and do stories on my own because high school football was huge. Now, Carlo, Odessa, Texas, and I didn't even know this. I didn't even know this until I got the job. Is the home of Permian football. And when John McCall, when I got the job, he said, before you leave town and go back, because I went back to California and I had to come back in 2 weeks. He said, do you know what you're getting into here? Do you know what's going on here in Odessa? I said, no. He said, this is the home of the greatest high school football program in the country. I said, what? He said, yes, it's called Permian football. We televise their games. They have a stadium called Ratliff Stadium. It seats 20,000 and it sells out every Friday night, and we televise their games. He said, I want you to go down the street here and go see the stadium. And I'm like, okay. So I get in my car, I drive down this, and I say, wait a second. Now, this is a little town, Odessa, Texas. Yeah. I start seeing this. That can't be a high school football stadium. That can't. I'm seeing this thing. It's like a mile away, Carlo. It's a pro football stadium in the middle of a desert. The parking lot's as big as a city. The stadium that Permian played in was in. Now, there was oil. That's what Odessa Midland was. Oil. The workers worked in Odessa. The oil magnates lived in Midland, 20 miles apart. This stadium was insane. So I got to see, God put me in a place where high school football was everything. It was, and Friday nights, the Odessa Permian football team was everything. It was the lead story. It was the middle story. It was the end story. Then we would televise the game and play it back in tape delay. So that's how I got involved in high school football and saw how giant it could be. But there's one big miracle coming, Carlo. You need to take a break? Can I tell you about the big one?
All right, tell us about the big one.
This is the big one. Whatever 2. I'll tell you another one. So I'm this weekend weather guy, photographer, doing sports on my off days. And I see there's a weekend sports opening at KDKA, the ABC affiliate in Corpus, because I'm keeping my eye on where they're. So I call up the news director. His name's Jock Minotti. I said, I'm a sports reporter, which I was 2 days a week in Odessa, and it was a weekend. I said, can I I want to apply for your job. And he said, yeah, you and 8,000 other people. I said, well, I'll fly myself in. I want to show you my tape. And I was going to show my LA tape and everything. So I fly myself in. I pay for it, Carl. I fly down to Corpus Christi. That's way across the state. The interview lasts 1 minute. Jock Money puts my tape in and he goes, you stink. He said, you're terrible. You're wasting my time. And I said, well, why am I not any good? He said, well, because your tape looks like everybody else. That was it. He said, see you, bye. Threw me out. So I get on the plane and I say to myself, well, that was interesting. So I went to the assignment desk at Odessa, Texas. I'm still the weekend weather guy. And I said, give me you got any crazy sports stories here? Or anything that's interesting. He said, yeah, there's these 2 guys that ran in the Olympics in like 1910. We were going to do a story on them. If you want to go do them, they're these old track guys. They were like in the Olympics in 1912. So I went and did this story of these 2 old guys who were in the Olympics and how they're still in great shape, and they live in Odessa, Texas, and they have all these old pictures of them when they're in the Olympics. And then I also went, the desk said, also, they're starting a fencing team at Odessa Community College. I said, well, let me go do a story of that. So I did a story of these fencers. I did these 2 stories, which ran on the air at KOSA. This is the next day, Carlo. The next day I went to the assignment desk. The next day I did the story on the track guys. The next day I did the story on the fencing guys. And I sent the tape to Jock Minotti at KDKA. I sent it overnight. So I think I had that interview on a Monday. By Friday, he's got a tape. He calls me up and he says, Fedko, you have got the job. You are a new weekend guy. And he said, the reason you got the job is because you had a 1-minute interview. I threw you out of here. I told you were terrible. And instead of crying, you actually produced 2 really good stories that I want you to do more like that stuff here. You start in 2 weeks. So again, my miracle, I go to KDKA. I'm there for 3 months. And the reason I'm there for 3 months is John Hambrick leaves KOSA, the number one guy.
Mm-hmm.
And KOSA calls, hey, you want to come back and do the weekends here? I said, yeah, sure. So I leave KDKA. They're really mad. I go back to Odessa. You can look this up on online. November of 1983, Odessa Permian's playing a high school playoff game in Wichita Falls, which is outside of Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're televising it. So we send a private plane and a cast of thousands to the game to do the game. And I'm the only guy left back. The main anchor goes, the GM goes, all of our photographers. And I get a call at 3 a.m. the night of the game. The plane's crashed. Everybody's dead. You're the main sports guy. John McCall calls me. The plane crashed and killed them all. Now, Carlo, I will ask you this. It's a rhetorical question. Did God crash that plane to make me the number one sports guy at KOSA at the age of 23? No. What did God do? He put me at the station where it was going to happen. The plane was going to crash. Those people were going to die. He put me there.
Yeah.
I was an overnight star. I was the number one guy. Everyone's watching us. The whole station's just been killed. All 3 networks show up the next day. The news director, John McCall, I'll never forget. He calls me in, and we're all in the back in the station at 7 a.m. All the networks are flying in. This is a big story. You can look it up online. It's pre-internet, but you can see it led the network, all network news that night. It's November 1983. I mean, it killed the GM. I mean, all these people were killed in that plane crash.
Mm-hmm.
You killed coming into Odessa, Texas, coming into the airport. Something malfunctioned with the plane. So McCall said, first of all, you're the number one sports guy, period. You're my guy, and just don't do any interviews. And he said, anybody who calls me or sends me a tape will never work for me again. I'll never hire if they call and try to get this job because someone died. Yeah, I never forget he told me that. So I become the number one sports guy there. The next year, Midland Lee, which their head coach was Spike Dykes, who went on to coach Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm.
They went to the state championship. It was crazy. And so I went from there, covered Permian football, was a real big star there in Odessa. Then I went to Amarillo, Texas. And I really honed my high school football coverage in Amarillo, Texas. It really took off. What I was doing with Skylights, I was doing in Amarillo, Texas. We would do 12 games on Friday night. It'd be crazy. We called it Friday Night Lights. And I was part of it was so good. Some syndicate thing picked up my stuff and started sending it all over the state.
Wow.
So I was in Amarillo for 2 years. I got a job in Milwaukee. The day I got the job in Milwaukee is the day I tried to get out of there. The only reason I wanted to get to Milwaukee was to get to a bigger market. Mm-hmm. So at 26, I go to Milwaukee. 1987, I'm sending tapes to Pittsburgh and Philly. I want to get back to Pennsylvania. So I fly into Pittsburgh in 1987, and I interview with all 3 stations. KDKA doesn't want me. They have legends over there: Johnny Steigerwald, John Sanders, Pompiani's over there. They don't need me. Channel 4 is interested in hiring me, but they have legends over there. They got Stan Savran, mm-hmm. Billy Hillgrove, Myron Cope. So I mean, but they're interested. I said I want to come here, and I've been in Texas, and I'm going to try to really up your high school football coverage. Well, never forget, I went to church. The channel at this point, I had a really good tape. So channel, they had flown me in. So I'm staying on the north side. And I remember I was still going to church every day. I went to church downtown on the north side before I went in to talk to Channel 11. And in the front row was Art Rooney of that church. The front row was Art Rooney. He went to daily mass. So it was on the north side. I'm in mass with Art Rooney. I mean, this is a really good sign, I figured. So Channel 11 in 1987 was a dog. They were number 3. They were a joke. Now, they had a legendary sportscaster, Sam Nover. They had 2 really good 2 and 3 guys. Derek Gunn was their weekend guy who went on to be a star in Philadelphia. And Tommy Verrado was a reporter. These guys were really good. They had 3 guys. And they had a full sports department.
Yeah.
And they had a GM named John Howell and a news director named Mike Seacrest. And these guys, I owe everything to them, because when I went into that interview, they didn't really have an opening, but they liked my tape. And John Howell and Mike Seacrest got it. You have to have management, Carlo, that gets it. And trust me, I worked for management later that didn't get it at Channel 11. There were some really bad dudes that worked at Channel 11, but not when they hired. This business is full of bad dudes. But these guys were really smart, okay? And I said, listen, no one's doing high school football here. You let me come in here and do high school football, and we'll own the town. And I remember Hal going, I think you're right. I said, listen, I got no talent. I'm a joke, but I know you got talent here. You probably got photographers because of the Steelers who are great. He said, yeah. I said, give me those guys on Friday night. Give me your best photographers on Friday night. Give me your best editor. And I don't trust me, trust them. I'll make it work. And they said, by the way, we got a chopper. I said, a chopper? Set me up in the chopper. They said, yeah. Skylights was born. Not because of me. Channel 2, they didn't even want to talk to me. Four had, Stan said, they didn't want to hear it either, basically. But these guys at Channel 11, these management guys got it. They got it. They said, yeah, we'll do Skylights. Now, they were doing high school football with the chopper already. But when they interviewed me, it was the perfect. I said, I'll take it to the next level.
Yeah.
We got to do like 10 games. They said, well, I don't know if we'll be giving that many photographers. We started out doing 4. But the one thing I said to them, and again, Carlo, if you young guys out there listen to me, I said, I don't care how much you're going to pay me, because you'll pay me eventually. I don't care what you're going to pay me. I care about the photographers. You got to give me the best guys. You can't give me the part-timers. I need the stars. And these guys were studs. These photographers, Scott Dobson, the late Timmy Holloman, who dies, I still pray for him every day, I swear. Ward Hobbs, Paul Filey, Majewski. These guys were Rick Minatello. These guys were out covering the Steelers. And I knew that the stuff they were going to shoot was NFL films type stuff, okay? Because they've been doing Steelers for years. So I said, give me these guys on Friday night. Whatever you're going to pay me, pay them. I need the best photographers, because it's what they put on the air is what's going to make high school football. And they gave me Rick Minatello, who went up the chopper with me, and they gave me these stud photographers. And I trust me, I'm a Christian. People don't get this. And when you're a Christian, you always get crucified. So I had no idea they were going to make signs with my name on it. I wasn't asking for signs with my names on it. But I did say, shoot the fans, the cheerleaders, and the bands, because they got parents. Shoot the fans, the cheerleaders, and the bands. And next thing you know, the community itself started making signs. And then there were these incredible places like Belle Vernon and Springdale and Northgate. And they just went crazy. We'd go to these stadiums and the whole thing would be signs. And when they come back with this, the photographers would come back with this stuff, and I'd like, these guys put a lot of work into these signs. We got to show them. I know they say Fedko all over it. I'm going to get ripped for them, which I did. And I accepted getting ripped for it. I knew the media was going to come after me. I knew I knew that my coworker, not only my coworkers, but the 2 and 4, the guys are going to rip me. And I'm okay with that. When you're on the air, Carlo, you're free. It's free, man. Come on, man, crucify me.
Yeah.
Because I knew I was doing something different. I'm going to talk about this on KDKA, the opening show. 1989, Steve Hubbard, Pittsburgh Press, grades all the sportscaster. Grades me last, puts a D. It says the guy has no shot. He has no talent. He's a joke. They're going to fire him. And I agreed with him that I have no talent, and I agreed with him that I'm the joke. But the problem with it, Steve Hubbard didn't know, was how much faith I had, and I was going to church every day. They weren't going to fire me. Johnny Howe called me up in the office the day that morning. He said, Steve Hubbard's a joke. Don't listen to him. They're going to come after you. The media's going to come after you because they don't get it. Keep doing what you're doing. He goes, I know you're a Christian. I know you don't care about the signs of your names. You're just trying to put it on here, which I really did. But it was all an act, man. It was all about getting viewers. Carlos, if you look at those numbers we put up in the 89 through 90, they were insane. No one was watching 2 and 4 on Friday night. Trust me, Carlo, nobody was watching 2 and 4 on Friday night. They were watching us. We were destroying people, not because of me, but because we had captured What was going on in Texas in 1982, they weren't doing it here. Okay? It was high school football is Carlo, there's two places where high school football is king. Texas and Western PA. Ohio's a distant third. No one was doing it, man. The miracle God gave me was I walked into a situation where nobody was doing it. Nobody was doing it. And Carlo, it wasn't me. It was the photographers. The photography was insane. These guys were incredible. It was NFL films type stuff.
Yeah.
Now, what was I good at? Here's what I have no talent. What I am good at, Carlo, what I am good at is I'm good under pressure. So I would come off that chopper. It'd be like 10, 15. These guys would be edited in. I had no idea what those highlights were. They'd throw me a roster, and I just would ad-lib it like Howard Cosell and halftime highlights. And by the way, I grew up in the 70s. Brady Bunch, Banana Splits, Partridge Family, Howard Cosell halftime highlights. True story. I'm doing the Cosell bit. This is a true story. And I actually want to talk about this at KDKA. I'm doing the Cosell. I've never told this story, but I love it. So I'm doing the Cosell bit in 82. I know damn Chris Berman is. For all I know, Chris Berman stole it from me. I don't know that. He was an unbelievably talented guy. But I was doing the Cosell thing in 82, man. I'm an old man. I mean, I didn't get that. Chris Berman, when I heard him doing it, I'm saying, I do that too. Because I grew up in the 70s with Cosell. I got that. The halftime highlights, Ballet Kelma, look at we would be doing it at school the next day. So, I'm doing it. John Howell and Mike Secrets, they're loving it. They're like, this is really funny stuff. So we hired this new GM from Utah. This is in like 2000. Howell retires. This new guy comes in. He calls me up in his office and he goes, this is a great story. He goes, Fedko, why are you imitating Chris Berman? I look at this guy and go, give me some GM from Utah coming in, tell me Chris Berman, dude, I'm an old man. I've been doing this since 1982. I didn't know Chris Berman was when I was doing this. Maybe Chris Berman said, what do you mean? What am I doing imitating Chris Berman? I almost went off on this guy.
Yeah.
And, again, that's the problem with Pittsburgh. You bring in some guy from Utah. We had a couple brutal news directors they brought in, one from D.C. They didn't get it. They didn't get Pittsburgh. They didn't get the Stan Savran, the Billy Hillgrove, the Myron Copes, the Bruce Kidens. They didn't get it. You can't bring in out-of-towners that have no idea what they're doing and that's where Howell and Sechrist were awesome. Think of some of the stars, those guys. They brought in Margaret Shortridge. Do you remember Margaret Shortridge?
Yes.
She was beautiful. She was stunning. She was from Upper St. Clair. Margaret Shortridge. Now, I love Peggy Finnegan. Don't get me wrong. Peggy Finnegan was beautiful. Margaret Shortridge was the greatest star I ever worked with. Margaret Shortridge was a flat-out bombshell. And she went on to Chicago, but it was a brilliant hire. Those are the people you hire. You find a beautiful woman from Upper St. Clair who's really good. Bingo! Julie Bologna. Remember her? Yep. Center High School, now Central Valley. They brought in these people that were local. Look how Two's done it. They're brilliant. Steige, Pompiani. These guys are from here.
Yep.
They're from Pittsburgh, Carlo.
They know it.
Savran, I still call him Mr. Savran. I'm the JV. He's the varsity. Stan Savran probably thinks I'm a joke, and I don't blame him. Stan Savran was doing sports in the 70s. You know what I mean? Same to Billy Hillgrove. These guys are legends. That's what works in Pittsburgh. Now, the great thing about why I was so good, and this GM from Utah didn't get it, comes in from Utah and telling me, what are you doing, dude? I've been doing Skylights for 12 years. You're calling me up in your office to rip me? I started it. When you're the first guy that starts it, Carlo, you win. And that's what Howell and Sechrist got it. They didn't have an opening when they hired me, but I talked them into it. Like, man, you're right. We do high school football. It's going to take off. And Skylights in the mid-90s, Carlo, was insane. Let me tell you something. LA called. I could have gone anywhere. And Channel 11 knew it. And LA wanted me because they started doing it in LA. And Hal called me up to his office because I never talked about money. And he said, John, we know LA wants you. And you know you can probably go there for $1 million. That's what LA was paying Carlo, $1 million. Okay.
Wow.
He said, we're going to give you something we've never done here. He said, I'm going to give you a 7-year guaranteed contract to stay here. And I said, I'm in. I could have walked out the door, Carlo, and they'd owed me 7 years of guaranteed money. But they gave me the guarantee because they couldn't afford to match what LA was paying. But and they knew that I was a Christian and I wasn't going to burn them. And they also had seen and that I had literally said, don't take my money, give it to the photographers. I wanted Skylights to be unbelievable early on. And I knew that it had to be the photographers. It wasn't going to be me. You give me bad photographers, I can't do anything with bad video.
That's
they
right.
Come back here and the video stinks. It's going to be terrible. And if they can't shoot the signs or the cheerleaders, the bands or whatever. So those photographers did it all. They did the work. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, just like I was in Odessa when that plane crashed, just like I got here in 87 and nobody was doing football. And then Channel 11 hires Peggy Finnegan. And then they hired Margaret Short, which again was Margaret. Go back and look at tapes. Margaret Short was stunning. It was the greatest hire in the history of Channel 11. And so to me, I was just grateful to be there. I was at the right place, the right time, Carlo, with the right people. And it was the Skylights of the 90s, as you remember, was insane.
Yes, I do.
It was insane. And I loved when I got ripped. I loved when I got crucified. I know I did struggle with the humility part because I'm praying all day to be humble. And here's these people making signs. And I'm like, you know what? It's just part of the gig. It's part of the deal. It was like professional wrestling. I'll take the heat. I'm okay with that.
So let me ask you, when we get to 2010, why in 2010 at the age of 50 to walk away? Was you wanted to watch the kids grow up?
That's a great question, Carlo. That's a great question. I think, again, we're dealing with a management team. I could see there. The guy from Utah was the GM. They had a DC news director, was just a mean guy. The management team was not the greatest, but it wasn't that. It wasn't. But I knew that the gig wasn't going to last forever because I was doing crazy stuff. So, it was music. I could tell these guys they weren't thrilled with Skylights. They didn't get it. And even though the salespeople would tell me, it's like, we're making so much money off of this. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, these guys, because guys coming in from DC, he thinks he wants to cover like they cover the Washington Redskins. Whatever, dude. But this is what God pushed me out. He pushed me out for many reasons. But I had 2 boys. My dad loved baseball. So I love Field of Dreams. I love that movie. Great. I hate movies because most of them are immoral. But Field of Dreams there's only been in my lifetime a handful of great movies made. The Lord of the Rings movies. Field of Dreams, one of them. Field of Dreams is the greatest baseball movie of all time. It's not even close. So, that movie really touched me because when my dad was in the military, he was constantly out of town. When he would come back, he loved taking me to baseball games. He loved it. And he took me to baseball games all over the country. Now, there was a year we were in Fort Leavenworth. He was actually fighting in Vietnam, and we lived on a base at Fort Leavenworth. But he would come back on breaks, and we'd go to Kansas City Royal games. And he took me. He loved going to the Orioles, and we were in Fairfax. He loved the Orioles. The Orioles, of course, were winning World Series. This is 1970. They had Brooks Robinson and Boog Powell and Jimmy Palmer. It was crazy. He would take me to Memorial Stadium. We'd go to Orioles games. He loved Frank Howard. We'd go to Senator games. We went to Pirate games, of course. Philly games, of course. And the Phillies were incredible in '72. They had Carlton, even though they're terrible. I mean, I saw him. He loved baseball. He loved it. And so he loved taking me to baseball games. And so that I saw that Field of Dreams movie, and I was just getting tears. I mean, just when they said have a catch, it's like I was like crying. Like, yeah, it's the greatest movie ever. So it really affected me. So I got married. I got lucky. I got married to a woman who was just phenomenal, great, religious. Jesus is everything to her. And I said, we got to have boys that are going to be baseball players. And when they were born, the first one was born in '98. I said, Tina, when he's 12, I'm done. I had seen what happened to kids by 98. And even as I moved into the 2000s, I had seen you can't raise kids and be a TV anchor at night. You can't do it. You can't do it. Okay. So I told them when they're 12, Teen, I'm done, man. I'm done. I'm done with this. I can't be working nights. I want them to be great baseball players, the best they can be. So one was born in 98. I got another one in 99. Christian was born in 98, Kyler in 99. So I built a batting cage in my basement. I took the money that Channel 11 gave me on a contract. I built a indoor batting cage. I put a batting cage in my backyard, and I built a flat out ridiculous gym in my basement. I'm talking where they're born, Carlo. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to make them the best baseball players they could be. And when Christian's 12, I'm done. So that was it. So when 2010 came around, 50 years old, incredibly. Now, don't get me wrong about I went to some great news directors there and some really bad ones, and good GMs and bad ones. But Cox, that owned Channel 11, phenomenal place to work. They had a pension. I had a pension at 50.
Wow.
They were really good to me. Really, really good to me. I have nothing but good things to say about Channel 11 and the people that worked there and the overalls. It was great overall. And especially my coworkers and the photographers, unbelievable people. Just I'm a nothing without those guys. So I retired at 50 from there, full time. And by this time, when my son started walking, I had thrown them 300 baseballs a day. I had a batting cage that were hitting 300 balls a day, and I just wanted them to be great baseball players. They ended up being ridiculously good in high school. The only reason they were drafted is because of me. If I could do it all over again, I would have left town. If I could do it all over again, I would have left, because my one son, Cotter, wasn't drafted because he's Fedko's kid. And I was, people looked at me as a joke. So that really hurt him. I mean, my son, Kyler, listen, we won 2 state titles. His senior year at Pittsburgh, and the Pirates scouts were at these games, especially they were at the game at Union at Washington. In the postseason in 2018, my son Kyler got out exactly 3 times, and one was a sac fly. He got out exactly 3 times, all the way to the state title game. He hit home runs in 5 playoff games in a row. He batted like 870 in the. I know it's single A, but don't give me single A when you're batting 870.
870.
And so he had a ridiculous year, wasn't drafted, went on to UConn, because the only reason he went to UConn was Christian went to UConn. And Christian was great, but Cotter was a stud. And they both played at UConn. Cotter batted .398 his junior year. It was first team All-American. And now he's playing the Twins organization, playing for the Cedar Rapids Colonels. And this is the great thing about how God does miracles. I mean, here I am in that movie, 1989, crying. Little did I know my son would play a pro baseball game there. They had a minor league game. They had a minor league game there on August 9th, Carlo. He got to play in it.
I saw your
field. He goes 1 for 3. He strikes out his first 2 times up. Then he has an RBI single, steals a base, comes in and scores on a sac fly. To sit in that stadium, that stadium that's right next to the Field of Dreams field, and watch my son play a pro baseball game was insane, Carlo. It was flat out. It was miraculous. It was just like God rewarded me for going to church every day for the last 40 years. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that happens when you go to church every day. I mean, it was ridiculous.
For those at home, I don't want him to undersell this. When we talked about scheduling this interview, I gave what I normally do with the days that I had available, and it was, Mondays work, because those other days you got to watch the boys play baseball. So
yeah, minor league baseball's off on Monday. They don't play any games on Monday, so it doesn't play on Monday. It was 2 before yesterday.
I have 2 last questions for you. My first wrap-up question is there one moment from Skylights that stands out to you? One out of all of them, is there one moment that you just immediately think of when you think of Skylights?
That's a real tough one. Really, really tough one. But you know what? I will say this. A lot of my memories on Skies do not have to do with the great teams, but the teams that weren't good. And to see the communities come out to see their team. There was a Springdale team that was 0-10. This is going to be it. They're 0-10. Mm-hmm. We landed. They played at a field that was like next to a factory.
Yep.
And we landed the chopper. The stadium is flat out packed. The team hasn't won a game all year. I get out of the chopper. I feel like John Lennon. There's like 100 people asking for my autograph, trying to get a picture. This is the mid-90s, pre-internet. And then I go in the stadium, and it's like, this is insane, God. I can't thank you enough for this. And to be in a stadium where a football team they're not good, but to see this community of Springdale, which I love Springdale. I absolutely love that town. A packed stadium.
Yep.
The team's getting blown out, but the people are out there supporting them. They've made 100 signs with skylights. I just remember going into that stadium that night going, God, this is miraculous. And this is a true story, Carlos. I was a mailman. I don't know if you know that. I was a USPS postal carrier.
I did not.
I was a mailman. It was 2 years ago. And I loved it. I was a carrier. I didn't want to do the driving. I wanted to carry. And I got a job in New Kensington, and I got to carry the route of Springdale. Right, that was next to the high school. It's called Springdale 1, that route. It was one of the highlights of my life to be able to deliver mail to those people. And I really did it. Why are you a mailman? It's like, you know what? It's a true story, Carlo. I try to live my faith. These people in Springdale, I'll never forget. I mean, the stuff they did for me. Mm-hmm. I'm going to deliver their mail for a year. I'm going to deliver their mail. It's the least I can do for these people. I loved delivering mail in Springdale and New Kensington. Now, New Kensington was Valley, and I delivered mail at Lower Burrell with Burrell High School. And I just wanted to give back to the community. I needed a dose of humility. I have great respect for mail carriers. It's a tough job, dude. You got to be a good athlete to be a mail carrier, not the guy that drives a car. I wanted to do it. I wanted to prove I could do it, but I wanted to go back into these communities, and I wanted to do something for them. I figured, I told my wife, I'm going to deliver mail. To go over and deliver mail. I got to deliver mail in Springdale. I loved it for a year, especially in the winter. There was COVID. I just loved doing it. And it's on my Twitter feed. And that's on route. The shot of me at the cross is on Route 30, which is in Lower Burrell. There's a guy that has a cross in his backyard that overlooks Route 28. And I just loved delivering mail.
It's the big cross that overlooks the 28 on the way to the mills.
That's correct. And I delivered mail to that house. And it was, I just love delivering mail for the U.S. Postal Service. Those guys are studs. Mm-hmm. Okay. Those guys that work at that post office at New Kensington are just unbelievable athletes. And they were great football players, wrestlers, and the women who delivered were great athletes. They were great athletes, still are. Those guys, I have so much respect for those USPS carriers. It's a great job. I love doing it. I was honored to do it. And the fact that I got to do it in Springdale. Where you asked me that's probably the highlight of my life is going to that. I'll never forget that Springdale team that was 0-10, but the stadium sold out and it was craziness. Northgate was another place I loved. I loved going to Northgate. Of course, I love going to Aliquippa, Monaco, which doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah,
Rochester. I like the little place. Newcastle.
You had the place rocking and
Claire.
You had the
Claire, the city of prayer. Yeah, same there. I like going there too. Claire, the city of prayer. Yep. I loved going there.
So lastly, if you had to give advice to, and you've given a lot of advice, I think through your stories and your experiences, you've given a lot of advice to the people if they were paying attention. But what advice would you give someone that wants to get into the industry?
Don't do it for money. Don't do it for money. You gotta want to do it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. You gotta love doing it, and you gotta be tough. You gotta ignore the criticism, because if Jock Minotti doesn't say you stink, I end up not being the sportscaster I was. I'd have continued just to be the vanilla guy. And that guy forced me to try to look at things differently. But the most important thing I'd say is have faith in God. You know, again, Carlo, everything that's happened to me has been a miracle from the starting as a weekend weather guy. How I pulled that off, I have no idea how I did weather and I did it for 6 months. No idea how I did it. It was miraculous. And, you know, I've tried to live my life as a saint. I've tried to be a Christian. I've tried to be moral, go to church every day. It's a brutal industry. You got to have, and that's where Christianity helps you. Baseball is very similar to this. That's why I really studied dads and how the dads made their sons great. Now, Mickey Mantle is the most famous one. Now, Mantle turned to women in alcohol because his dad really messed up. His dad got the work ethic right, but he got the faith part wrong. And so Mantle turned to alcohol and women. And I made sure my sons had a lot of faith. And if you look at Collar, even a lot of his games, even the Field of Dreams games, he'll have a game where he strikes out twice and hits a homer. That's how it is in baseball. You can strike out 3 times and hit the game-winning homer, and you've had a great game.
Yes, you did. That's
how it is in this business. You're going to be in this business where you're going to meet a lot of mean, evil people, especially on management side. You got to be who you are. You got to be Carlo. You can't be what somebody else wants you to be. You got to be who you are. And once I had a lot of faith to do stuff that was really goofy. And I had a reason for this. And by the way, I mean, we were playing on this stuff. Again, I go back to the management. There's great management in TV and there's bad management in TV. And that's why, Carlos, I can tell you right now, you give me a TV station in Pittsburgh and I'll have every single person watching it because I know the format that works in Pittsburgh. I had management that really got it. And so we wanted to get every viewer we could on Skylights. So not only did we concentrate on the bands, which were these kids are incredibly talented. You know the kind of work those bands put in. And the bands were ridiculously talented. The cheerleaders and the fans in the stands and the people and the kids. But I would do those skits. I do those funny little skits. Now, why was I doing those skits? Not because I am a clown, but I mean, the reason we were doing the skits was we knew there were people that could care less about sports. So we figured, well, how can we do crazy, just get people to watch? Like, what's Fedko going to do next? Well, let's do these crazy Saturday Night Light skits. So I do these skits, and they'd always, you go back and look at them, and I loved them. They'd always, of course, make fun of me, you know. And I would take the criticism that I was getting, like in the paper, and I'd play off like we'd have a guy play. And it was always usually Jack. Oh, the guy, I forget his last name, but anyway, there was a great reporter at our station that would play my boss. And he'd call me into the office and say, "You're a clown. You're a joke. No one's watching you. The ratings stink." And then guy would run into me with boxes. And we would just do this crazy stuff that would kind of make fun of me. Every week we do these little skits. And of course, it would always end with this guy running into me with boxes. And the reason that started, Carlo, was I was in a game early on. It was like 1988. And some kids said, "Hey, can we run into you with boxes?" I said, "Yeah, that sounds pretty funny." They ran into me with boxes. I started doing it every weekend. I just started going to these stands. Then we did this thing where a guy would come out of nowhere and hit me with boxes. We were doing it for 12 years. And there was a guy named Rick Minatello who was really, really good at shooting these things and putting them together. Jack Edsel was his name. Jack Edsel. He was a genius. And he would play my boss a lot in these things. And then it was funny because as we got into the 2000s, I actually was making fun of my bosses, little did they know. But it was a great way to get people to watch, like, what's Fedko going to do next? The people that really didn't care about sports. And we'd make these skits would be like a minute long. And I had the DVE guys doing it. They were hilarious. Cred and Paulson. I mean, these guys were hilarious. I had Freddie Fu. I would get I get people in my neighborhood. There was a chiropractor, Dr. Simkovich, we'd use. And I'd get these people to do crazy stuff. And it was part of the fun. We wanted Skylights to be an event. It ended up being 15 minutes. We ended up doing, it started out at 5 minutes, ended up being 15 minutes. And it was all because of those photographers, man. That's not false humility. These guys were just crazy good. I mean, they were really good. They'd come back with stuff and I just would ad-lib it. But I'm like, I do the banana splits and the stuff that I've been doing as a kid. Howard Cosell. I was doing that stuff as a kid.
Well, I want to say thank you very much. And I understand that you're a very humble person, but from what I've seen or what I saw from the time I was a kid all the way up, it was a get home and watch Channel 11 because you got to watch Skylights. So
thanks. And it was a team effort, Carlo. Again, that wasn't me. That was those photographers and the management. And it was just, everything was a perfect timing thing there.
Well, we've come to that point. I wanted to say thank you for taking the time. Best of luck this year. I'll be tuned into KDKA for the pregame show. You can find us, for those of you that are looking to stay with Dingo Talk, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart Radio, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. The only place that you have to look differently, instead of typing in Dingo Talk, you have to add an underscore to the Instagram page, or you're going to find Wild Dogs. I'm not a wild dog. I promise. I'm me. This is John Fedko. I'm Carlo Guadagnino. But that's what you're looking for. You're looking for me. You're looking for my face. You're looking for this logo. This has been Dingo Talk. I am Carlo Guadagnino. John Fedko with KDKA Radio now. Check him out this fall for the high school football games. John Fedko, thank you very much again for stopping by.
Thank you so much. Thanks. It's been an honor to be on your show.